who's on my side, what can I eat, what can eat me, and picks up some lessons.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible.
Stage 7 is approach.
What are you doing?
I'm going in.
And here the hero is now pretty deeply into the new country and getting ready to face the big one, the big question or battle or struggle in that world. And so there's a moment of preparation and rehearsal for that.
Guns. Lots of guns.
And then there's the actual moment of facing the fear. That's stage 8, the ordeal, where the hero has to go through some kind of severe test that may involve facing death. The result of that is stage 9. There's some kind of reward. If you survive, there is a reward, there is a payoff. Next, stage 10 is the road back, where the hero actually now has to collect himself or herself and start finishing.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
And often there'll be a chase scene at this stage. The 11th stage is resurrection, where the hero has to face death one more time, but in a more final way, a bigger scale, and at a deeper level, so that they're really, really being tested about everything they've learned on the whole journey so far. And that leads to the final movement, return with the elixir. This is a term Campbell used. The elixir is some kind of magic thing like the golden fleece or the Holy Grail that brings back life into the culture. And so the idea is the hero has to go on a journey and learn some things and change and bring something back to share with everybody else, or it's a total waste of time.
All right, good morning, everybody. So this week and through break, you guys will be starting to work on your hero stories. And the hero story is actually worth 100 points. It's worth as much as an exam. And it's actually inspired by a former student. It was one of my first students ever in this class. He was in here 12 years ago. And he was this type of student who was very bookish and always came prepared. And I've told you this story before, but I just want to remind you of the basic elements, because this is the same journey you'll go on. He was really struck by the hero story when we talked about it. This idea that a hero could be called to adventure, go on a road of trials, and then be transformed. And you'll remember that there was actually a young woman in the class who really was a hero, who'd already been on a road of trials and was transformed. And they hit it off immediately. And they fell in love, and I thought they would just be together forever. They raised a kid together. And then several years later, he wrote to me with this email. Those are actual words from his email. So a few years later, I caught up with him, and he said that after that, he had just started running. And he would run like all day and all night, 20 miles a day often, for month after month, through all seasons and all weather. He would often run barefoot just to feel the earth, just to feel something, and just think about what went wrong. And you remember this moment that he had, where he was kind of lifted outside of himself. And this is the same moment I want for you guys, and this is why you do this assignment, is he had this moment where he could see himself as if from above. And he could see this guy on this road of trials. And he had this sense of compassion for himself. And for the first time, he really cared about himself, and he looked down on himself and he thought, my goodness, you're a hero. But you remember, this isn't the kind of hero that's full of himself. This is a hero that sees the hero in everybody else as well. He realizes that we all go through trials, that we all have our weaknesses that can become strengths. And this kind of wisdom and compassion gave him the strength to heal his own relationship. So that's why we're doing this, and that's why we're looking at these other heroes who have walked the path before us to show us a way to live better in the world. I often think, anthropology is this, it's a lot of interesting things to learn, but it really is meaningless unless you can put those into action in your everyday life. And so we looked at Gandhi's law of love last time, where his advice for becoming a hero is to have no attachments, no fear, no duty, and remember to act without focus on results, act without fear, and act from your center, not by what others have told you to do. And like we said, this all ends in selfless love. Gandhi actually had a mantra that he used to remind himself of this all the time. He would say Rama, Rama, Rama. Rama was, in a way, this would be the equivalent of you, if you're a Christian, it would be the equivalent of you saying, just reminding yourself of Jesus constantly, right? This is his way of saying Rama, Rama, Rama. Rama is sort of like a Christ-like figure in Hinduism. But what he really meant as he said it, what he would think about, is not something that you have to be religious to think about. This is something you can practice as a secular person as well. It simply meant, I forgive you, I bless you, I love you. And it's said that when he was shot, he looked into the killer's eyes and said, Rama, Rama, Rama. So last time we also talked about Bodhidharma, who spread Zen Buddhism. He's the founder of Zen Buddhism, and the story of the guy cutting his arm off and wanting to be taught by the Bodhidharma. And we left you with this moment when he did start teaching. What he was teaching was this new way, not just of thinking, but of moving. And that became Shaolin Kung Fu, these 18 hands, the 18 movements of the enlightened ones. It was this idea that you had to integrate mind, body, and spirit, thinking, doing, and feeling. And so here's Jason Scott Lee visiting a cave outside of Shaolin, learning about this.
There's a statue of him. Bodhidharma sailed across the ocean from India to China to impart Zen in his teachings. The foreign language wasn't an issue as he adapted various methods to teach Zen to different people. During the time where he meditated while facing the wall, he developed the now famous manuals called the Muscle and Tendon Changing Classic.
So he's talking about how he sat there and came up with these movements that were not only meant to express the possibilities of the human body, but also to integrate mind, body, and spirit. And so Jason Scott Lee is an actor. You've probably seen him in several action movies where he plays the role of a kung fu master or something like this. And so he goes around the world learning these different styles of movement. And while he was there, what he learned that was most profound to him was that it wasn't just about movement, that it was about mind, body, and spirit.
You have to be flexible in deciding how to execute a move. This is how the move is done. But you have to think about how to improvise and apply to various situations. Understand?
This is meditation in motion. There is a relaxed quality to it, but there's also an explosion of chi. I don't know when those moments are. So I'm going blind, trying to learn the moves.
And one of the most powerful things he learns here as he's trying to integrate mind, body, and spirit is a similar message that was brought out in The Matrix in this scene.
Come on, stop trying to hit me and hit me.
So stop trying to hit me and hit me. This idea of stop trying, it is in a way to stop thinking, right? Because you all know this from athletics. If you've ever played sports, there's a moment where you cross over into the zone, like where you're really in it. And that's that moment where you're totally integrated in mind and body. So how do we get there? How can we actually live from that space in a constant way? There's a Zen saying, a Zen poem, which says you cannot get it by thinking. You cannot seek it without thinking. So it's really this really paradoxical thing, right? It's like you want it, but to seek it, you have to want it, right? You have to think about it. But then to actually get it, you have to stop thinking about it. And the same thing with getting into the zone in sports. It's like, yeah, sure, you want to get in the zone, but as long as you're thinking about the zone, you're not in the zone. And you may have had this moment where you are in the zone and you're like draining every three-pointer you put up, and then you think about it and you realize, hey, I'm in the zone, and your next shot is a brick, right? Because you're thinking about it. So how do we do this? This is the art of living, you might say. And this is why this class motto we have, that you can't just think your way into a new way of living, you have to live your way into a new way of thinking. And so we're trying to get where we can integrate these things of mind, body, spirit, thinking, feeling, and action. And this is what we mean in a way by becoming a hero, living from your center, always feeling like you're in it. Like, what would life be like if you could always live from a space that feels like you're in the zone, like that you're really like living from your center? So it turns out there are traditions all over the world that focus on this. And I'll go back to Shaolin to start off. I just want to demonstrate, show you what a Shaolin monk has to go through as they're learning Kung Fu, as they get initiated into Kung Fu.
The final test, given before a monk was allowed to become an emissary of the temple, was known formally as the Hall of the Wooden Men. To the monks, as the Corridor of Death. It was a test in which monks who lacked the capacity to defend themselves and their temple died an often painful death. The test consisted of a long corridor, lined with 108 mechanical dummies primed to randomly release weapons with deadly precision and force. Blocking the exit sat a burning 300-pound cauldron. For those who reached the cauldron, the reward was the intense pain of burning flesh and the indelible brands of the Shaolin. A tiger on one arm and a dragon on the other. To survive was a victory of the Qi.
It's pretty intense. It makes you think like American Ninja Warrior needs to step up their game if they really want to do this. Like a 300-pound cauldron, burning cauldron, you get the tattooed at the end. But everywhere around the world, there are these intense tests. In Brazil, the Satere Mawe have these big gloves they put on. See these big gloves here? And they're filled with bullet ants that just have this intense sting to them, and they're just getting stung thousands of times, and they have to keep these things on for about 10 minutes, enduring intense pain to just demonstrate their self-control and their power and their ability to withstand pain. In cultures all over the world, we see these kind of seemingly bizarre rituals, jumping over cattle, or the Maasai and their circumcision rituals, or this one from the South Pacific, in which people actually jump from this very high platform like this.
Ricky and Steve saying it's the island of happiness. I can't see them getting happiness out of that. I mean, they look happy, and then pants they're wearing, but constantly happy. How high is it, John?
30 meters.
30 metres. And what are they expecting here? Because I doubt I'll do it. Are these people expecting me to do it from the top?
Yeah, they want you to do it to the top.
Yeah, but why? Why? You see, I've got a mortgage and things. I've got bills to pay. This is high up, this. It's a lot higher than I thought, this.
So why do people do this kind of stuff? So we see these initiation rituals all over the world, and there are these really common themes to them. In fact, they're exactly the same in some respects. It's sort of an abstract level. That is, at first there's this separation, and there are always symbols of death during this separation. So oftentimes the face is painted in the same way that you might paint yourself up for a funeral, or you may be painted up to look as if you're dead. Or there may be other symbols of death that go along with it. You are pulled from the mother, so this is representing like separating from your childhood, and so you're in some cases violently pulled away from the mother, but then guided by a mentor to go across the threshold into a space that's called liminality. This liminality is a space that's kind of away from society. It's completely secluded, and it's often secret. And when you're in the space of liminality, you go through the trials and the test. And these trials are for you to show that you can overcome fear. They're to show that you can overcome base desire, selfish desire, that you're willing to live for something bigger than yourself. And then finally, the secrets are revealed when it is shown that you are ready. And once you've learned the secrets, once you have these secrets revealed, you step out of liminality and you're reintegrated back into the society. And there's often symbols of rebirth at this time. So in male initiations in New Guinea, for example, it's often the case that the men will actually like spread their legs and pretend as if they're giving birth as the initiates crawl through their legs. And it's like this symbol of a rebirth. And so we see this all over the world. And we see also initiation rituals among women all over the world, here as well. And sometimes there's always like some sort of mark that's left, or some way of marking that this person has been through the ritual. So you see all these different ways of marking transitions through life and revealing the secrets of life to people. But you notice also that there's always this notion they have to overcome fear and desire to get there. That's fascinating to me that this theme of overcoming fear and desire would exist all over the world. And this also was a fascination of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell studied all religions everywhere, and what he found as he was studying them was that there was this story that showed up in all of them. And we're talking about thousands of religions, not just like the big seven, like Islam and Christianity and Judaism and Buddhism and so on, the ones you've heard about. But think of all the different tribes out there, all the indigenous people out there. And everywhere in the world we see these hero stories. And so he wrote this book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It becomes one of the most important books of all time. This is from Time magazine, ranked at the 47th most important book of all time. And what he found was that the hero story is very similar to initiation rituals, that there's a call to adventure, which often involves symbols of death. The person is pulled from ordinary existence and then guided by a mentor into a liminal space, you might say, which is this land of adventure. And in this land of adventure, they have to overcome fear, they have to overcome desire, and the secrets are revealed. And then ultimately they return. It's often symbolized again by death and rebirth to save the world or to bring the boon back to the world in some way. Now, if this looks like a Hollywood story, there's a reason for that, and that's because Joseph Campbell's book became famous in Hollywood and became like a template for how Hollywood would make movies as well. So now in Hollywood, you often see a hero pulled from ordinary existence, guided by a mentor, overcomes fear, overcomes desire, secrets are revealed, and then they return. So Campbell was taking this from all stories everywhere. He found this story. He could see that this was symbolized or present in the story of the Buddha. It's present in the story of Christ. And he found that he also wanted to say that these stories serve a very important functions. These functions are, one, they serve a mystical function to connect us to something bigger. This is this idea that there's something bigger out there, and these stories can connect you to those things. There's a cosmological function in that it gives some explanation of the world and why it is the way that it is. There's a sociological function, which is that it provides rules for living and keeping people together and living in peace. And then there's also pedagogical function in which it teaches us lessons about how to live a good life. But what he was concerned about was that it seemed like these functions were failing in the religions as they were being lived in our time, because mostly people were looking at their religion as whether or not it was true or false. They weren't like trying to listen to it for wisdom. They were just trying to say, well, my religion's right and yours is wrong. Or if you were atheist, you were saying, you're wrong. And the atheists were failing to see the wisdom in the religion, but so were the people who were believing in it, because they were just focusing on belief rather than finding the wisdom in it and then living it out in their everyday lives. And so ultimately he decided to call on the artist of the time to remake the myths. And George Lucas with Star Wars was the first to hear the call.
Joseph Campbell said that all the great myths, the primitive myths, the great stories have to be regenerated if they're going to have any impact, and that you had done that with Star Wars. Are you conscious of doing that?
Well, when I did Star Wars, I consciously set about to recreate myths and the classic mythological motifs. I wanted to use those motifs to deal with issues that existed today.
So Joseph Campbell is doing this in the 1930s. At the height of the Depression, he disappeared into the woods and he just read for years and years. He read for 5 years about all the world's traditions. And during this time, this is when he came to realize that they had these similarities, and he wrote this book.
It's possible that if I had run across that, I would still be writing Star Wars today.
So what Campbell had noticed is that in traditions all over the world, we find these stories of people living ordinary lives who are called to the hero's adventure. They meet mentors who teach them lessons.
Let go your conscious self and act on instinct. See? You can do it.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No! Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
My last mentor probably was
Joseph Campbell.
Joe Campbell, who asked a lot of the interesting questions and exposed me to a lot of things that made me very interested in a lot more of the cosmic questions and the mystery. I put the Force into the movies in order to try to awaken a certain kind of spirituality.
So the hero, here is set off on this road of trials to discover true love, to discover his true self.
Use the Force, Luke.
And there's often this transformation that's symbolized by a literal death and then a rebirth of sorts. At which point he attains the ultimate boon, this sort of knowledge, peace, power, salvation, and uses this boon to heal the world. And he often does this by uniting what seem to be dueling forces.
Never.
And he can dissolve core conflicts and contradictions.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
I'm telling an old myth in a new way. I see Star Wars as taking all of the issues that religion represents and trying to distill them down into a more modern and more easily accessible construct that people can grab onto to accept the fact that there is a greater mystery out there.
I don't believe it.
That is why you fail.
And you can see these lots of different religious themes coming out here, and it's symbolizing how Campbell worried about the wisdom of these traditions being lost. That people were just worried about whether their religion was true or not, without really seeing the wisdom. So George Lucas tried to help change that in some way.
If it's a tool that can be used to make old stories be new.
So soon after this Star Wars, there's this memo that starts flying around by Christopher Vogler, and it just is an outline of Campbell's
Of course,
book.
Joseph Campbell and his analysis of the hero's journey. We took in all of that as we began to shape the story.
And so lots and lots of people started to put the formula to work at that time, and you start seeing it in all kinds of movies. And we're going to look at a couple of those today. We'll start with The Matrix. But I'll go quickly through The Matrix. I know it's kind of an older movie now. I'll get to some other stuff. But ultimately, the goal here is to show how you can apply this to your own life. So as we look at these movies, which are actually calling up religious themes, I want you also to think about your own life and see if you could actually see yourself as a hero. What would the chapters of your life be? If your life were a movie, what would it look like? And can you have the compassion for yourself to see that you are a hero? And maybe that means your journey's not over, but can you at least frame the movie and see yourself moving through it and see yourself with some compassion? Now, one of the key things is you'll have to enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path, where there is a way or path. It's someone else's path, as Campbell would say. And so the story, as in The Matrix, is, the hero's asleep in this ordinary world, and then he's told to wake up. And this is that call to adventure. I'm going to jump over here to Rango, and I'm going to mix Rango and The Matrix. How many people have seen Rango? Just a few. Okay, so I'm going to ruin it for everybody else for the most part. But Rango is it looks like a kid's movie. Turns out to be this really profound, deep movie about finding yourself and figuring out who you are. And so let me jump into Rango and show you what it looks like. Rango is a lizard. He appears to be a very ordinary lizard living an ordinary life. And then you suddenly see in this opening scene that life is not how it seems.
I know who I am. I'm the I'm the guy, the protagonist, the hero. Every story needs a hero. People, I've had an epiphany. The hero cannot exist in a vacuum. What our story needs is an ironic, unexpected event that will propel the hero into conflict.
I'm speeding it up, of course.
I must get to the other side.
The other side, you mean that just now that was you crossing the road?
Okay, so now he's met the mentor, right? And Neo meets the mentor as well. I mean, the mentor is this key figure. So think in your own life. Who's your mentor? Who are your mentors? Who are the people who have entered your life at key moments to guide them? And here is Rango meeting his mentor.
That's why Why'd you do that?
This is my quest. He waits for me.
What? Who?
The spirit of the West, amigo. The one. They say he rides an alabaster carriage with golden guardians to protect him.
What are you talking about?
Enlightenment. We are nothing without it.
Nothing? Your delusional quest just ruined my life. I had an incredibly complex social network going, highly sophisticated friends. I was very popular.
Friends? I don't see no friends.
Well,
You are a very lonely lizard. Now, help me up, and I will help you find what you seek.
You will?
Quickly now. I must get back to my quest.
You mean you've done this before?
Oh, yes, many times. Yeah. Come. That's it. Pull my finger. The spirit is waiting for me.
Okay. Okay. That's not gonna work.
I must get to the other side.
Why don't you just wait until there are no cars coming?
It's not so easy as it looks.
What?
It's a metaphor. You need a little help, amigo?
I think the metaphor broke my spleen.
The path to knowledge is fraught with consequence.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the path to water.
If you want to find water, you must first find dirt.
All right, so off he goes, crossing the threshold into adventure. He goes off into the desert. I mean, there's so many like obvious symbolism here, and they're obviously pulling off of different religious themes and so on, walking into the desert here. But there's also this crossing of the threshold into adventure and a death and rebirth. So let's zoom in here and look at the story that's emerging here is a story of identity. Like he thought he was this lizard, the hero, right, in his own little story of his own making. Now he got thrust out of that, and now he's in the land of adventure. He's crossed the threshold into the land of adventure. He's going to now have to face his core fears, conquer desire, and so on. That's going to be the general theme as he heads off into the desert.
Here in the Mojave Desert, animals have had millions of years to adapt to the harsh environment. But the lizard, he is going to die.
So, you gonna die out here or you wanna ride into town?
No. No. Yes, please. Thank you. Sorry.
Today's Wednesday. Wednesday's when we all get to it. So who are you really?
Well, I'm a man of many epithets. There's my stage name, my pen name, my avatar. Had a pseudonym once, but had to legally change.
And so the stranger, seeking companionship, finds the woman, much like the sirens of ancient times, luring him to his certain demise.
Nom de plume, I have a CV.
So the theme all along here is that he just doesn't really know who he is, and he's pretending to be a hero, and then just by chance, you know, as he's like strutting around pretending to be a hero here, he actually accidentally becomes one by accidentally killing the great menace of the town.
You killed that thing.
He did it with one bullet.
But just like he said.
It's about time we had a hero around here.
And so the stranger basks in the adulation of his new friends, sinking deeper into the guacamole of his own deception.
When is he going to die?
Soon, compadre. Soon.
So this is actually like a really deep and profound movie, like focusing on like this need for acceptance. Like your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world, as Jim Carrey said, or as Parker Palmer said, these challenges, largely beyond our control, strip the ego of the illusion that it is in charge and make space for true self to emerge. So this is the importance of trials. As you think about the trials of your life, think of them as spaces where they've allowed your true self to emerge. And what is that true self? And what can you see about your true self as we head out on this road of trials here?
Speed road! The bank speed road!
The bank speed route, the town is dry, will die of thirst. The people cry, promise to protect the vault. The water's gone, it's all his fault.
What exactly are we gonna do now?
Now, we ride.
So he's now sort of the hero, the sheriff, and he's chasing down to find the robbers who took the water. He appears to have caught them. He appears to have found the water. This appears to be the ultimate boon. It appears that the hero has succeeded. But there's actually no water inside. And so now we have to like face his true weaknesses, his true problems. It wasn't the problem of not having water. The problem is he doesn't know who he is and he's not really living an authentic life. But this weakness can actually turn out to be a strength. The very quest itself, the thing that makes him weak, turns out to be something where he can build a strength. But to do so, he'll have to face the dragon. And in this, in Rango, it's almost like a true dragon. It's Rattlesnake Jake.
There's no water.
It's all his fault! He said she's gonna bring the water back!
It's just we got no hope without that water.
We got nothing left to believe in.
You see that sign up there? As long as that sign says sheriff, you can believe that there's law and order in this town. So you want something to believe in, Spoons? Believe in me. Believe in that there sign. For as long as it hangs there, we got hope.
Show them who you really are. Why don't you just pull your gun and shoot me? But of course, you won't need all these. Just one, right? Go ahead, hero. Pull the trigger. You got killer in your eyes, son. I don't see it. You didn't do any of them things you said, did you? You didn't kill them Jenkins brothers. You ain't even from the West, are you? Say it! No. Oh, speak up. I don't think your friends here heard you.
No.
All you've done is lie to these good people. You ain't nothing but a fake and a coward. Isn't that right? Yes. Louder!
Yes.
Who are you?
So this dragon represents like your true deepest fear and the true biggest trial that you have in your life. And he had been masking this trial by just pretending to be something he wasn't, and therefore also shielding himself from his authentic self. Ultimately, this is why a death and rebirth is necessary. And this is part of the human story. Is like we always are changing, and at some point we have to die to our old self to become a new self. And we create all these sort of fabricated things about ourselves, like our personality, or the things that we think make us who we are, but those actually shield us from the true self that's underneath. So death becomes a necessity to free the true self. So So this sets off like one of the most beautiful scenes ever. I'm gonna dim the lights because it's like such a gorgeous scene. One of those beautiful scenes in any movie, I think anywhere. And this is the story of his death, right? He's kind of died to his old self. And now, like, you think of the road of trials he's gone on, and now he's actually right back where he started, back at the highway. In a way, this could be the exit from this road of trials. And as he gets there, he finds remnants of his old life. He finds what used to be his friends. Like, these are the things he used to talk to in his little aquarium, in his pretend world. But he realizes at this point that he's really nobody.
Who am I? I'm nobody.
But there is some power in this, right? Like, realizing that he's nobody, he truly transcends fear and attachment. Dying to his old self and crossing the threshold into a new space. This is the death and rebirth. This movie does such a beautiful job of representing this visually. Here he gets to the edge, the threshold, and he literally, in a sense, dies. Just as Neo died and is reborn, Rango is also reborn. And it is almost like the symbolism here is pretty clear. It almost looks like heaven, right? And
Golden Guardians. The alabaster carriage. The spirit of the West. Excuse me, Mr. Spirit, sir?
And this is where he'll receive his ultimate boon or enlightenment. So he's gone through this tremendous road of trials, and he could not be ready for what this spirit of the West is going to tell him had he not been on the road of trials. And this is the gift of those trials, right? So this is, look at the, no matter where you are in your hero journey as you work on it, like recognize that your trials are actually gifts, that they're preparing you for something, some form of enlightenment, some insight. And here he gets this incredible insight in this final scene.
What are you doing out here?
Searching, same as you.
I don't even know what I'm looking for anymore. I don't even know who I am. They used to call you the man with no name.
These days, they got a name for just about everything. Doesn't matter what they call you. It's the deeds make the man.
Yeah, but my deeds just made things worse. I'm a fraud. I'm a phony. My friends believed in me, but they need some kind of hero.
Then be a hero.
Oh, no. You don't understand. I'm not even supposed to be here.
That's right. You came a long way to find something that isn't out here. Don't you see? It's not about you. It's about them.
But I can't go back.
Don't know that you got a choice, son. No man can walk out on his own story.
So you made it. That's right, amigo. The other side of the road.
Did you just see that?
We each see what we need to see. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. It is.
Come, my friend. I want to show you something.
No man can walk out on his own story. I'm going back.
But why?
Because that's who I am.
This is the final bit, is like after receiving enlightenment or the ultimate boon, the hero has to make one more choice. It would be really nice to just stay in this mode of enlightenment, to just stay where the world is so beautiful and so on. But the hero makes the decision to go back to the world and bring his gift with them to make the world a better place. And so here the hero returns to bring the water back, and we see in the final scene here the water, the hero bringing light into darkness.
Ringo! You brought the water back, just like you promised. You really are a hero.
Oh, well, the thing about heroes is whenever you...
Don't spoil it.
Right. Well, I don't know about you all, but I could sure go for a dip.
All right. So now let's think about our own hero stories. I do this like every time I teach this class. I do the same assignment. I think it's really important to do this assignment. It's something that means a lot to me in my own life and changes the way I think about my life and the way I live my life. And so I want to share with you an example. It'll be of a hero story. It's my own hero story. It's obviously pretty personal, but I think it's worth sharing just to give you a sense of how this looks. So I just also want to show you like how it's created. And I think it's really important when you're thinking of, like in this way. It works really well to write in hand, you know, and not have the distractions of a computer around. You know, if you need to like go out to the Kanza or sit on a hill somewhere and do it, that's great. Like that's a great place to think. Just whatever you need to do to find a place to reflect and think. And as you look at the steps, you're going to get a little worksheet in your recitation this week that'll show you the steps and take you through the steps. The first step is just to think about your life, and you know, if you're writing a book about your life, what would the chapters be? If there was an opening scene of a movie, what are the opening scenes of your life? Like what do we see you doing that demonstrate who you are? Those are the things we want you to think about as you start to reflect on yourself as a hero. And then you have to go through the different phases. And so think about like was there a call to adventure in your life? Have there been mentors in your life? What trials and temptations have you faced in your life? And if you have reached some ultimate boon, what was the ultimate boon? Or if you're not there yet, what do you think it might be? Or what do you think you're working toward? So I'll just go ahead and read my hero story. Mine is actually very similar to Rango's in the sense that I feel like I've spent a lot of my life living kind of a fake life, like a life in which I sort of was creating a world that didn't actually exist. And so I use a metaphor here of a book. It's actually not just a metaphor, it's a real book. Like when I was in high school, I kept a journal. And in this journal, when I go back and read it, I realize it's not actual real life. It's like kind of more like life as I wished it were. Often when I wrote that journal, I knew that other people would read it. And I would actually share it with other people, like at study hall in high school and stuff like that. And so it wasn't like my deepest thoughts. It was more like a performance. And so I'll tell you, so here's the story of that book. So there once was a book about a smart, strong, cool, and handsome young prince destined for greatness. And in this book lived a smart, strong, cool, and handsome young prince who thinks he's destined for greatness. He felt good when he read his book. He felt smart, he felt strong, he felt cool, he felt handsome. He let many other boys into his book, mostly those who were not as smart, strong, cool, or handsome. After all, there could only be one hero. He went on many adventures with these boys. Each one grew smarter and stronger with each adventure, and eventually outgrew the book and left. As he got older, he knew it was time to find his princess, and he already knew who she was. She would, of course, have to be the most popular girl in school. She would be difficult to win over, but the hero was not deterred. Meanwhile, another girl kept coming back to read his book. He liked her because she made him feel smart, strong, cool, and handsome, but she was not a proper princess. He knew she was smart, strong, cool, and beautiful, and destined for greatness, but not everybody saw her that way. She was not unpopular, but she was not capital P popular, as he envisioned the proper princess to be. He worried what people would think of a story in which the hero settles. So this is like, I studied like my old journals like really carefully and had this epiphany that like this girl I thought I was in love with, I was actually didn't even know her. She was just popular, and so I was in love with her. And then there's this other girl in my life who I actually was building a real love with, and I failed to see that love for a really long time because I was just thinking about being popular. So month after month, they became closer and closer. She read pages of the book that others had never seen. Eventually, he let her see the scraps and unfinished drafts, the stuff he never thought he could ever show anyone. Thank goodness she's not a princess, he thought. I can never connect this deeply with a real princess. I would have to stay strong and cool. And then a second thought struck him. He could rewrite the book. She could be his princess. It would be a book about perfect love. So this is a moment when I made the choice to like realize that I actually did have like a really strong love with this other woman. So chapter 2, the book of love. She loved the book, and so did he. Their lives were filled with magic. They spent their days laughing and playing, and their nights in Neverland sharing the deepest corners of their souls. Everything she did was like magic to him, but over time she came to dislike the book. She felt pressured to live up to the ideals of a princess. He tried to reassure her, telling her that she could do anything and he would always see her as a princess. I don't want to be a princess, she said. I just want to be me. And she left the book. And so the hero who had experienced his first true love now knew his first true pain. He vowed to never get hurt again. He wrote lots of love stories over the coming years, but never actually felt true love. He didn't feel anything. He went on grand adventures to prove himself and started planning the ultimate adventure to the other side of the world. So this is all real. So just, I just had a really hard time loving again after my first love leaving me. So then one day, the wisest and strongest woman he'd ever met read his story. She was so wise and beautiful that he felt small in her presence. She did not make him feel smart, strong, cool, or handsome. She liked him a lot, but he didn't understand why. He needed to know why, so he could keep doing or being the things she liked, so she would not stop liking him. But she couldn't say what it was. She disliked him. But she did not like the book. If he wanted to be with her, he would have to leave the book behind. He was scared, he was scarred, he hesitated, and then he stepped off the page. So this is now chapter 3. He felt uneasy. He kept trying to draw her into a new book, but she refused. She challenged him to live the true adventure, to become a true hero. He went around the world not just to see the world, but to see himself. Every time he encountered a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, she was there with her wisdom and strength. Every time he stopped believing in himself and tried to write a new fantasy, she was there to keep him real. Year after year, he kept on the adventure, slowly climbing the mountains he once could only dream about. He felt their jagged edges, wiped their dust from his brow, left his blood in their soil. It was real and hard. Then one day, when he least expected it, he had apparently arrived at the top. Millions of people all over the world applauded his achievement. He liked the attention. He felt smart, strong, cool, and handsome. He was named the coolest man on the planet. This is all also weird, real, and like a weird part of my life in which I became sort of e-famous for a while, and like millions of people following me on YouTube, and I actually like had dinner with like YouTube founders. It was like just a really strange time in my life in which I was literally called the coolest man on the planet by a magazine. It's like silly time in my life. Okay, it was about 10 years ago. So he finally felt he had proven himself, that he was worthy of the woman. She was proud of him, but felt no differently. She did not treat him like the godlike hero others seemed to see. He felt lonely up there on the mountain. In fact, he felt more and more like an imposter the longer he stayed. He felt less and less smart, strong, cool, and handsome. This was not the ultimate boon he sought. He had merely lived out the ultimate fantasy of being loved by millions without having to love them back, without having to put his real self on the line. He tried to stay on top of the mountain, but to do so, he had to do what others wanted. He had to be their hero. I don't want to be a hero, he thought. I just want to be me. And he stepped off the mountain. Chapter 4. They had 3 kids, built an urban farm with chickens, sold their car, and biked, walked, and ran to feel the world. They invited the world into their real lives. No storybook wonderland, just real life. Yet for years, he struggled to find validation for her love. He cashed in on his fame and made lots of money. She was not impressed. They built a beautiful home. She was not impressed. He worked out day after day to get in the best shape of his life. She was not impressed. Fame, money, success. Wasn't this how the book was supposed to end? Meanwhile, life went on. Dishes were done, then dirtied, and done again. Laundry was done, dirtied, and done again. Kids played, fought, screamed, and laughed. Cats died. We all cried. And she sang, and she laughed. And above all, sorry, I'm going to cry. And above all, she loved, for no particular reason at all. And he started to understand. The point of music, Alan Watts says, is not the end of the music. Same way with dancing. You don't aim at a particular point in the room because that's where you're supposed to arrive. Sorry. Okay, I'll get through this. The whole point is dancing the dance. We've cheated ourselves a whole way down the line, he says. We thought of life as a journey which had a serious purpose at the end, and the point was to get to that end. Fame, money, success. But, he concludes, we missed the whole point the whole way along. It was a musical thing, and you're supposed to sing or dance while the music was being played. Love, like music and dancing, doesn't need a why. He found the joy in loving, not the pain of wanting to be loved. Loving did not require him to be smart, strong, cool, or handsome. Hearing of his revelations, she was happy for him, but she was not impressed. She just liked him a lot, and finally, he did too. All right, so that's my story. And now it's time for you to write your story. And a lot of this is like sort of figuring out who you really are, to see through your own darkness, to see through your own weaknesses, to see through your own mistakes, and actually see those things as gifts, as things that make you who you are. So for your reflection, I just put this up here on the board. This is something to reflect on. Write it on your note card. It'll be a good starting point for your recitation this week, which should be a very deep and profound recitation, a great workshop for thinking through your own hero story.